Okay, I want everybody to take a nice big deep breath and let it all go. I am here only to be truly helpful. I am here to represent him who sent me. I do not have to worry about what to say or what to do because he who sent me will direct me. I am content to be wherever he wishes, knowing he goes there with me. I will be healed as I let him teach me to heal. Amen. Okay, so we have been working on this section that has to do with New Year.
Mary Ann,
Yes.
I have a message here from a Cindy saying that her mic is not working.
Okay.
She can't hear or what?
Uh,
Anybody else see that?
all right. Thank you for calling that to my attention. And please, if there's anything that I need to address that's in the chat box, please bring it to my attention because I'm usually, when I'm teaching, I'm not paying that close attention to that.
She says she can't hear or talk.
Okay, so does anybody have any suggestions they might share with Cindy other than perhaps closing down Zoom and starting over? I know that sometimes happens, or to restart her computer.
Well, it says she can hear, but she can't talk.
Okay.
And you're muted.
Oh, right. Okay.
Oh.
But even if you unmute, you're saying? Oh, okay.
So she'll use a chat to ask questions?
Yeah, that would be good. Is that okay, Cindy? Right, my mic isn't working. All right, well, I hope that'll work. Okay, she says thank you. Okay, so last couple of weeks we've been talking about this section. It's on page 329, and I'm going to re-review it once again because I just think this is such a powerful section. And I was thinking this week, I don't usually make suggestions of people to underline in their book or maybe make a, type up a copy of this little prayer, but I think it's so powerful that I will suggest that you might want to do that because it's something we need to remember, and it's something that's just not natural of the flow of being a human being on planet Earth. So again, it's on page text 329, where Jesus says, "This is a time in which a new year will soon be born from the time of Christ. I have perfect faith in you to do all that you would accomplish. Nothing will be lacking, and you will make complete and not destroy." So Jesus is saying, if you do what he's asking you to do, this will bring you to your Christ self, to that connection with who you are in truth. But then Ken had this little comment before I read the next little part where it says, "Then say to your brother." This is what we want to say, especially when we are tempted to say the opposite, which is our normal response when we're upset or irritated or in fear or any of those other kinds of attributes. We either go right down into whatever's going on or we attack immediately because we have been programmed to be this kill or be killed attack modem. And so he says, this is what we want to say, especially when tempted to say the opposite. Without guilt or judgment, we look at the ego temptation to attack, realizing that the following words will make us truly joyful and give us peace. And once again, when you come to the point where you are willing to say these words, and when I say willing to say these words, you may make it to the point where you're in the midst of an argument, and many people have shared in the group before that they've had experiences like this, where you're in the midst of a fight or attack or whatever, and in the back of your mind, you get this reminder, you could choose peace instead of this. And many people have commented that the fact was, at that particular moment, they were not ready for peace. And so saying this prayer would simply be mouthing your mouth, but not coming from your heart. But as we keep practicing this, as we become more and more observant of us responding from that place. And then eventually we recognize this is not really what I want anymore. Then the time for this prayer will come from a place of I am totally open to hearing, to see, to be shown something different than the way my ego has set this up to be that I no longer want. So he says, I give to you, to the Holy Spirit as part of myself. I know that you will be released unless I want to use you to imprison myself. And a couple of weeks ago, we actually went to some of the sections where it talked about when I imprison somebody else, I'm literally the jailer that has to be in prison while I keep an eye on the person in jail. So when I do this to my brother, I'm doing it to myself. In the name of my freedom, I choose your release because I recognize that we will be released together. And I think it's important to realize that this prayer not only should go out to a specific person when we're ready, but to be offered to ourselves as well. Because if you understood this character that I call me is not who really I am. What I am is either the identification in my mind of this thought system or this thought system. So this thought system then projected into the world and made a character called me and made a character called you. But I'm just as much a part of this projected experience as my brother is. So if you think of all the times and ways that you judge yourself, you're not good enough, maybe you're too fat or too tall or too short or too something is not right, and there's something either lacking, not good enough, or whatever other attributes can come up where we feel guilty about ourselves, not comfortable about ourselves, that we can also apply this prayer when we remember and when we're ready to be shown something different than what we have set up our world to be. And you can also apply it to an experience, again, like the situation in Washington from last week. It's not just the people that made up that experience, but the scenario of that experience of, I want to see this scenario through your eyes rather than my eyes. So this is a prayer that we can literally basically use from across the board of wanting to be shown another way of seeing than what my eyes are telling me. And I think it's very important that we begin by looking and experiencing and being brutally honest with the fact that this is my experience right now. I do think that person's an idiot, or how dare they do what they're doing, or as Shelley started out the meeting of, I'm at an emotional low because I really do feel like an innocent victim. Well, think about this character called me is literally been programmed to play that part, and automatically all the emotions, all the fears, all the thoughts, all the stuff come rushing in because that's what I've been programmed to respond to. And if you see over here, we have the guilt, sin, and fear, kill or be killed. That comes with the belief in separation. So that's way beyond my intellectual understanding of what's going on in the world. And of course, we know workbook lesson number 5, where it says, I'm never upset for the reason I think. Well, dang, I believe I know why I'm upset. Many people would say, but until I turned on the TV last week or the week before, whenever that was, I was perfectly fine. And then I turned it on, and now I'm really enmeshed in all the emotions and whatnot that went on. But the bottom line is, even before you turn the TV on, even before that situation arose to the surface, you weren't okay. You weren't at peace. Even if you seem to have that experience of a heightened experience of lack of peace, the fact that we're aligned with this thought system is representative of the fact that we aren't at peace, because peace doesn't live here. All that did was trigger the remembrance of this that brought it to the surface. So as the Course talks about, we want to then use what the ego set up for a different purpose. So instead of getting caught and enmeshed in all the stuff that's going on in the world, what can I do to rise above this, to find out how to heal it rather than become part of it and then churn in that stuff that's going on, which is
So,
what we almost
Marianne,
always do. Yeah, go ahead, Andrea.
so could you say that when we're just we turn the TV on, that actually we were looking for something to get on the throne about for ourselves,
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
take control of, to fix, to become the God's first lieutenant. We're looking for something to have a discussion about where we have an opinion and it matters one way or the other.
That is correct. And if you think about it from the perspective of the guilt, sin, and fear comes to the surface, and then we, literally find a something, and we'll call this, what happened in Washington. All of a sudden, this is the problem. I was okay until this happened. And really, we weren't okay. There was some form of lack of peace, and then we found something on the outside that was going to be what I projected onto, so that we focus all of our energy on this being the problem, and it keeps us from realizing that the problem doesn't exist here. It literally exists here.
So,
And
Marianne?
major camouflage.
Yeah. Marianne,
Yes,
lesson 16 says, I have no neutral thoughts.
correct.
So I have no neutral thoughts about this computer. Does that mean I'm practicing separation or wholeness? Is that what that's talking about?
Well, I would say when you look at the computer through the eyes of the ego, you will see some form of conflict or separation. When you're looking through the eyes of the Holy Spirit at that computer, it would be totally different. And, the computer is just the computer. And
But doesn't the existence of the computer imply separation?
well, I mean, again, yes, that would be correct, but we have to understand we dove in head first in the pond of the separation. So now we're in the midst of the separation, and we're starting to, I guess you could say, walk backwards from the pond and evaluate and observe what the pond is made of, so that we would eventually step beyond that into the unformless experience. But
So
right now, this is
the
where we
computer
are.
would be a symbol of separation then, right?
Well, yes, but think about Jesus dying on the cross. We would say that was an expression of separation. But because he was looking at it through the mind of oneness, he did not see that scenario from the same place as egos see it. So again, we're going to take everything the ego has set up, but begin to look at it through the eyes of oneness instead of the eyes of duality. And then the intent, the purpose, everything will start to shift.
But how do you look at a computer through the eyes of oneness?
You ask to see it that way.
Ask for help.
Right, and then you'll be shown how to see it through that lens.
I can't see it that way.
No.
Rose the puppet can't see it any other way. I can only see it as separate.
Correct.
So, asking for help is moving Rose aside and letting the Holy Spirit come through.
Yep.
It's the only thing I can do.
And again, this takes some practice, because we are addicted to looking at literally everything through the eyes of the ego. And literally every time you're asking to see it through his eyes instead of yours, that's not a magical wand that necessarily means everything in your world's going to just poof and disappear and everything's going to turn out wonderful. But I was thinking this week how sometimes I give the example of learning how to play the piano. And we know if you're very serious about learning how to play the piano, you just keep hacking away at it over and over and over. And we could say, oh my God, that sounds horrible if you're somebody listening to that person playing the piano. But literally every time they practice, every time they put forth effort, something is growing in their awareness of how to be a good piano player. And that's exactly what's happening to us. Every time we're asking, we're becoming more and more aligned with this even if this appears still to stay the very same as it was before, or maybe even get uglier than it did before. But you are doing what we're being asked to do to begin to heal our mind, that's going to represent more and more the reflection of love instead of the projection of guilt, sin, and fear.
So Marianne,
Yeah.
I'm looking at this computer. It's telling me the lesson is saying ideas or thoughts are either true or false. They either promote peace or war. Every thought.
Correct.
So is that just?
But again, understand that the thoughts that are going to come from here are going to be thoughts of war. Automatic, across the board, even if I'm a sweet little old lady giving cookies to the kids in the neighborhood. Because if somebody else comes along and makes better cookies and I get upset, that's a representative that I really wasn't coming from love in the first place. But when I'm automatically aligned with this, I will automatically be able to express from that place of love. And Ken would say, you could stand up in front of a group of people and read the telephone book, and it will come from a place of love if you're aligned with love. So don't try to think that, I've got to figure out how I'm going to look or be whenever I'm identified with one instead of the other. Just spend more time over here, and eventually you will see the computer and everything else through the lens of love instead of through the lens of separation.
And you know what? There's nothing that we can do to speed this along or make an understanding. Again, I'm trying to understand something from what.
Right.
Ken says about this lesson, you should underline in multicolors the phrase there that everything you see is a result of your thoughts. And this comes, from the preceding lessons. I think in my interpretation of a thing, this means that, therefore it is.
Yep.
I see a computer, but I'm not seeing the computer for what it is. I'm seeing my interpretation.
Correct. Yep.
And something else that I saw, about a theme, the course's theme that was really helpful for me, in that this is a process of undoing and non-duality. We're going through an undoing process. This is we can't make it happen any faster. And it's so interesting because I can't take away that wanting to and that anxiousness, but
But it's been my experience, Tashara, that as we begin this journey, we are so enmeshed in guilt, sin, and fear, and anxiety, and terror, and fear, and whatnot, that we're going to walk into the world and experience everything from that gunk. But as we keep asking for healing, that gunk is diminishing, and this is starting to build. So all of a sudden, you'll find yourself feeling lighter or experiencing things and not being affected by them like you used to be. But that just very gradually unfolds as we keep letting go of our staunch connection and belief that this is what is true, and we open the door and say, show me another way. And
But the computer is not true, right?
ultimately correct.
Okay. So if we
it
think,
sort of goes back to the metaphysics and looking at what quantum physics. I think I'm looking at a thing and I'm just looking at atoms and shit spinning in space, right?
Right.
Are you familiar with the quantum physics and the understanding of how, we're just looking at pixels and shit just spinning. And, we fix our eye on it and our interpretation and bam, there it is. So what we're looking at, we're not even looking at anything.
Right.
We're making shit up as we go. Excuse my French.
But Jason, I want you to also put this into the perspective of there is no Jason either. But you
right,
see,
I get that.
the course brings us to where, we're playing blocks on the ground. And so Jesus sits down on the floor with us and starts playing with us where we think we are. Not because any of that's real or true. In fact, the course says that in numerous places, but because that's where we think we are. So that's where we're going to begin to play and begin to learn and grow and move beyond.
Yeah, it's like stages. It's like beginning to look at things. I know there's no hierarchy of illusions, you know, in truth.
Yeah.
But here there is a hierarchy of illusions. So
Definitely appears to be, yes.
you know, yeah. So that's what I'm saying is it's like stages. It's like all of a sudden saying I'm looking at a chair and then realizing that chair isn't there.
Yeah.
You know, that's not true.
Right.
Thinking about that chair even being there is an invitation for separation, right?
Yes. But again,
Yeah, okay.
right, yeah,
We're asked not to look at the chair and say, well, that's not really there. We're asked to look at the chair and say, help me, because I think that is there.
Okay.
yes, that's a good way to put it, yes.
You know,
And until it's time to sit down, then
notice the program. This is the program here. You're coming from the left side of the chart. This is the program. You know, kill or be killed. Notice.
Yeah.
Right, but it's even noticing right down to the chair in front of you that you think is that I think is there, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And all your thoughts about what that chair, you think that chair is for.
Right.
Ask me, you know, help me, because I have my own ideas about this. I have my own interpretation.
Yeah.
Ken says it's not the tiny mad idea that's the problem. It's not the ego that's the problem. We're accepting the ego's interpretation of the tiny mad idea, which is that it's wrong and it's sinful. It's nothing. The Course is telling me ultimately it's nothing. I'm not there. I don't believe that yet. I'm not, you know, I haven't that. So I'm just looking at my interpretation of everything and ask for help.
Yeah.
I can't
so
hear
what is the lesson where it says everything is a lesson the Holy Spirit would have us learn?
I don't
Everything.
know off my head.
Everything.
Yeah.
Everything all our perspective, all our way of looking at things is a lesson that the Holy Spirit would have us learn. It leads us to peace if we ask for the Holy Spirit to help us. Otherwise, it's an obstacle.
Right.
It's either peace or it's an obstacle. And God knows the computer is, you know, for the last 10 years has been nothing but an obstacle to me. But I've learned to drop all that when it's time, when I need to do something, like now, like be on this call. Everything looks like an obstacle until you interpret it through the eyes of the Holy Spirit.
Yeah. Yes, and again, it's like literally our entire world is an illusion. And so when Jesus uses some of those workbook lessons, he's trying to have us get into the practice of realizing that literally everywhere I turn and every experience and situation I live in is a reflection or projection of a belief that the illusion is real. So when he suggests that we practice with all the little tiny things in our lives, we are beginning to take the juice, I guess you could say, the juice out of our belief in the illusion, and then start to see more clearly through a lens that's very different than absolutely everything that's going on in this world of form. So he's taking us again where we think we are.
Marianne,
Yes.
so you were kind enough to explain to me who Ken was, and I researched it over the week, and I stumbled on a video that, and you are all probably very familiar with this because you've studied his work for so long, but I found it helpful that he said he sits in the theater next to Jesus,
Yes.
and he looks at the stage of what is, you know, the illusion up there on the stage.
Yes.
And so if you can separate yourself, that you're in the seat looking at what's going on along with Jesus, that's one way to think of it.
Yes, and that's so valuable, especially if we understand the metaphysics of the Course, because literally the world we see is a projection from the mind. it's no different than going to a movie theater. What we see in the world is literally a projection of the thought system of the ego. So when we can sit in, as you mentioned, imagine ourselves in the audience, holding the hand of the Holy Spirit, observing the insanity of a world that's made out of all of this, then we're not so attached to it. We're the, I guess you could say, the bystander instead of the character.
Like we're watching TV.
Exactly. And it would be like if you were an actress and you know, went on a TV show and now you're watching yourself on the TV show. You're one of the characters in the show. But when you're watching it, instead of literally being identified with thinking that's who you are, you don't get nearly as wrapped up in it. You simply watch the play or the movie as it goes by. And, you know, we know in many movies or serial shows, you know, sometimes somebody gets killed. And then that actor's in the next movie and they're perfectly alive and well. Well, we don't believe that about this dream or storyline that we're living in. We think it's all serious, it's solid, it's important, it's valuable, but it's really no different. And the process of learning and growing from this, as Rose mentioned, is to come to the point where, you know, we're starting to intellectually grasp that a tiny bit, but this is going to take us to the point where we live it and understand it and it becomes us. It's no longer this like, what the heck is that all about? You know, far-reaching experience, but we'll slowly become that experience. And the more we can be here, and again, you're either here observing or you're here being the character. When you're the character, everything that takes place is going to cause you suffering and pain and fear and guilt and all those things. But the more you can rise above and totally disconnect from this and simply be the observer, the pain and all those things dissipates and goes away because you're no longer identified with the character. And another wonderful, beautiful, fantastic thing that happens is when I'm identified with the character, I keep perpetuating the carpet of time. When we step above for any moment and observe, we are literally collapsing time. And I know I showed this chart a couple weeks ago, but if you think about it, when you rise above the battleground for a moment, where you're literally outside of time and space, when you come back down, you've literally collapsed this period of time. So we're really shortening our experience of undoing the dream when we do this. So it's a real win-win situation because every moment time is ticking, but when you're in this time or this place of being out of time and space, when you come back, you've finished off this without having to live it. So it's very beneficial for us to spend as much time rising above the battleground. And that requires practice because we're addicted to seeing the world as this is me. So it's sort of like snapping out or interrupting that flow of the way we normally operate and live our world.
Well, that's a good point about the theater. Yeah. And I know Ken has also said that, you know, it's important that we get help with this and help meaning practical help because, and it reminded me, as Don was speaking of, looking at I never saw myself as a good mother, but I have a sister friend who was an excellent mother, and she would watch scary movies with her, with the children and explain certain things because, we, as children watching something scary, we get very, we personalize it and they get very, they misunderstand. And she has a way of just watching the movie with them and explaining, well, that's make believe and they're doing this and blah, blah, blah. It's very gentle. And that's how I see certain, this looking, because sometimes you can look at things and it can be very terrifying what's being said and what we're being asked to do.
Absolutely. Wow. That's a neat concept. I never even considered that as a possibility, but that's quite unique. So as I mentioned earlier today, in regard to the prayer, that we need to work on applying this to ourselves as well. And you don't have to go to it. If you want to, you can, but in workbook 84, which is a review lesson, it talks about, I am in the likeness of my creator. I cannot suffer, I cannot experience loss, and I cannot die. I am not a body. And so basically what dropping our connection to this is leading us to is the experience of the love that created me as itself. I don't believe that now, because if we did, none of us would ever have doubts or fears or experience of lack, or I'm not good enough, or there's something wrong. Any of those things would not enter our thinking process at all, because we would be coming totally from our thought system that was given to us by God, instead of the one that's in opposition to the one given us by God, which would bring us all the other stuff that we constantly are thinking, feeling, acting on, and whatnot. So in workbook, let's see, I think it's workbook 84, and it talks about the section from this, again, is a review, 68, where it says, love holds no grievances. So when we were talking about this, anytime you hold a grievance, that we're being asked to say this prayer. But if we understand why we would want to do that, is because love holds no grievances. And the very fact, again, that I'm holding grievances represents the fact that I don't align with love. So it says grievances are completely alien to love. They don't exist over here. They only exist over here. So if you're becoming aware of how frequently during a day you have these little subtle aspects of holding grievances, then that's a reminder. Oh, that has to mean I'm aligned with the ego and not with the Holy Spirit. And when you're ready and you're willing, then you can choose to drop this to find out what a love could be that doesn't entail, a world of experience that doesn't embrace grievances at all. So grievances attack love and keep its light obscure. And, we talk a great deal about the sun versus the cloud. And we know that the sun is there, but it's covered over by the darkness of the belief in separation. And so that's the light is being obscured, because this is the thought system we are choosing to identify. If I hold grievances, I am attacking love and therefore attacking myself, capital S. Because when I chose the identity of a separated sun in opposition to who I am, I literally left behind my experience of being connected with what love is. And now I live and breathe and do everything else in the concept of separated experience. Most of us before the course had no clue that that's what we were up to or what we've done. But that's exactly what this is saying we've done. And we keep ourselves from knowing our real Father, and we keep ourselves from knowing ourselves as the self, capital S, who is identified with the Son of God. My capital S self thus becomes alien to me. I don't remember who I am or what I am over here, because I'm totally enmeshed in the dream of the ego as the hero of the dream. That's got all my attention, and it's taking care of everything. And it's keeping me from knowing this. And then it says, I am determined not to attack myself today so that I can remember who I am. Again, what a lot of the process of the course is having us get in touch with the fact that literally when you're choosing for the opposite of love, you are attacking yourself. That's not the way our mind is wrapped. That's not the experience we're having when we're constantly playing in the world. And this again is constantly trying to remind us over and over and over and over in lots of different ways, so that we would come back to this understanding and slowly start to choose more and more frequently to find out who we are and to identify with that capital S self instead of the little mind at little s self that keeps us entrapped within the prison of the belief system of the ego. All right, so I'm going to go on with a little couple words that Ken said. So when we say this prayer, or at least we start to embrace the possibility that I might want to say this prayer, this puts an end to the ego's principle of one or the other, because within this concept, the game is one or the other, because we're coming from a thought system of duality, and in duality, there's more than one, and in more than one, there's kill or be killed. It is not you or me, it is you and me. Recall that the separation and its world began with the thought, it is God's self or myself. And that goes back to who's sitting on the throne. If it's me, I'm going to have the effects of guilt, sin, and fear, death, separation, and so on. If I align with God, then I will have all the attributes that were freely given to us from God, because that's our natural heritage. But the moment we decided to do it on our own, all that got wiped out, and now we live in the opposite. So a lot of the practice most of us are working on or practicing is to understand what we chose and why it wasn't to our advantage, so that when we're ready, we can begin to realign with God, and we're literally realigning with that capital S self that is who our true nature is. If I am to exist, God must be sacrificed. And literally this means if I'm me, God isn't. And whenever I'm really ultimately aligned with God, I might still physically express in a body, but I will no longer be identified with my body being who I am. So it's either here with God being in charge or here with me being in charge. There aren't any other choices from the perspective of the ego. So God must be sacrificed if I'm in charge. If he is to exist, I'm the one that's sacrificed. And understand that because we've identified with the ego for eons of time, literally when we are being asked to drop this, it feels like I am losing. I'm losing my identity. I'm losing all the things that I cling to in this world. And literally we're gaining, but from our perspective, because we're so addicted to this, it appears as though we are sacrificing or losing. Now, having said that, the Course is very adamant that this is not a course in sacrifice. That whenever you come to a place where you literally are ready to say this prayer from a place of, I don't want to play in this arena anymore, and you're willing to drop it to find out what his plan is, that is no longer coming from a place of sacrifice. It's coming from a place of, I've had enough of this and I really want to find out what this is. So if there's still strings attached to your choice, it probably means I'm not really completely willing to just drop all the investment I have in this thought system. And that's not good or bad. It simply is a helpful recognition that if I'm not willing to drop the illusion, it's because I value the illusion more than I value finding out what truth is. And it usually is representative on some deep level that that's because I'm afraid of the choice to choose for love instead of what I'm aligned with. But as we become more and more in tune with the effects of having chosen the ego, we will become more and more willing to drop it to find out what truth is, because we will begin to become intolerant of the effects of that choice. Rather than deal with our personal sacrifice at the hands of a bloodthirsty deity, which is how we see God when we're aligned with the ego, we blot the thoughts from our mind. So this is how we dealt with being afraid of the love of God, was we stayed here and we played this game where I'm an innocent victim and other people are the perpetrators or the people that make me an innocent victim. And it's not about me, it's about them, which is a big, huge, gigantic camouflage that keeps us stuck within the illusion. And we're now starting to understand there's another way to look at this, there's another answer, and when we're ready, that answer is available. All right. and that we start to understand that this imprisonment hurts us, and we'll eventually understand and really believe that I can drop this and then return to God as the one Son. Which means, guess what? I have to take my brother with me. So that again, that prayer of I give you to the Holy Spirit as part of myself literally means you are part of myself, because literally both of these characters are coming from the same mind. I only projected it out to make it appear that this is the game that was being played. So I can't leave my brother here and go running over to God and be aligned with God. I have to bring my brother with me in order to get there. And as you're practicing this section in your daily life experiences, be very aware I'm not all that excited sometimes to make my brother part of me. I want to see him as the guilty party, and so I can point my finger out at him and wait until he does something different or the situation changes or whatever before I can be okay. And when we get very weary of that, and there is a line near the beginning of the course where it says there is a limit to how much pain we can tolerate. And when we get to that place where this is too much for me, I can't do it on my own any longer, we do come to a place where we are absolutely willing to drop my entire investment in what my eyes have been programmed to see to keep me stuck in this illusion, so that I'll never want to turn back to who I am. So again, it's together or not at all. Yes.
So that's where Shelley is now,
Right. Yep.
which is a good place.
Which, yeah, it is a good place. It just doesn't feel real comfortable as an ego. And this is not a course in making the ego feel comfortable. This is a course in undoing the ego.
But you have to use it as a plus.
Yes, use it as a plus. Yes, yes, yes. And I usually encourage people to understand that that really is good news. They don't usually smile when I say that to them, because it doesn't feel like it's a good place. It feels pretty awful. And again, think about this. Let's say this is my identification with the ego. Literally, going to the other side means this, okay? Total opposite in every single aspect of who I think I am. So do you think that's going to happen with a lot of ease and enjoyment and thrill and excitement? No, it's definitely not. But as we slowly continue to do that, one day we will find ourselves over here and we'll think, wow, I would never wish any of my story on anyone on the planet, even my worst enemies. But I'm sure glad I went through this, because now I see the effects of having made those choices. But the process can be pretty brutal at times. I'm sorry to say. I wish I had better news in that regard. All right, so he completes that particular section on saying, and let all your relationships be made holy for you. And I like the way he words that, because I'm not going to figure out how to heal this relationship. That is not available to me. I'm not being asked to do that. I'm being asked to drop the storyline that I hold near and dear, that is continuing to keep this thought system going. And when I come to a place when I can just like wash my hands of everything I believe my eyes are telling me, and I'm willing to drop that to be shown something different, then those relationships will be made holy for me. My job is to drop it. The rest of it's none of my business, as far as how long it's going to take, what it's going to look like. None of that's important to me, other than recognizing I don't want this anymore, and I'm willing to find another way. All right, so we are going to move on to another section. So before we do, does anybody have any comments, questions in regard to what we just went over?
I have a brief question about what you just said about dropping the storyline of relationships. So,
Okay.
and the class could probably assist with this as well.
Sure.
So does that talk about if we have difficult relationships currently to drop the, kind of thinking about it and replaying it and justifying your role and all of those things that the ego does? Or is there something more that should be occurring?
Well, okay, so first of all, you need to take yourself where you are, okay? And where we are usually when we're thinking in regard to what you just shared is probably, I'm not quite ready to let it go because I got baggage here that I got to churn through. So I would be very honest with where you are, and be very honest if you're not ready to drop it, and that's okay, because the answer will be available when you are ready to drop it. But quite literally, yes, you can apply this to any type of a conflicting situation or relationship. And that doesn't mean you don't go to therapy. It doesn't mean that, let's say you want to sue somebody, that you don't sue them or whatever. But will you continue to take yourself from choosing this more and more frequently as you walk through whatever it is that you're walking through? Keep working on it from this perspective, because as I always talk about the idea of, if the roof is leaking, you do want to mop your floor because your floor is wet and someone could slip and get killed. But ultimately you need to go to the roof and have this, the roof healed, because it will continue to be an issue in the world until it's healed in your mind.
And plus the person doesn't have to be alive.
The person does not have to be alive. And I also do want to address what you mentioned, Dawn, in regard to those thoughts that just keep being repeated in your mind, because, the ego is so tricky. The person doesn't even have to be in the room, and we can get whacked out by whatever's going on in our mind. And just be very aware that the ego doesn't care how it gets you here, as long as it gets you here and keeps you here. And it doesn't matter if it's happening now or it happened a month ago, it's going to keep bringing up the old garbage and keep you flipping and flopping over here. And so as quickly as you can bring your mind to, wait a minute, I don't want to play in this arena any longer. Help me to see this different.
Drop the storyline.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, we have lots of places to practice, because group tapes are just beyond amazing in my way of looking at it. They can just take us for a ride all over the place. And, I've listened to people in the group will say, yeah, some relationship I had 20 years ago popped into my head today, and it just started churning all over again. So again, it doesn't matter what pops in your mind or in your experience. Stop as quickly as you possibly can and go, wait, stop. We're not going down that avenue again. And I think I'll just share this story because I know you probably haven't heard it, where the person's walking down the street and they fall in a big, huge hole, and it takes very, very, very long time for them to get out of that hole. And then the next time they walk down that street, they fall in the hole. Only this time they get a little smarter, a little quicker, and get out of the hole. And the third time they go down that road, they fall in the hole and quickly get out of the hole. And eventually they go down that street, and they don't go down that street. And, somebody mentioned earlier in the class about this being a process. Well, it literally is a process. It's a process where we will get pulled down into those holes, and it will stay there a very long time. Again, not because the thought system of the ego is anything. It's that we've invested it in being something. And unfortunately, whether we like it or not, we have invested in this thought system for eons of time. It's got the power, it's got the juice, it's running the show. So now we have to, gingerly keep pulling ourselves back away from that and aligning with this. But eventually it will become more and more aligned with this, and then the ability to shift will happen much more quickly. But you got to go through the footwork. There's no easy, fun way of avoiding it, because this is what we've ordered. So it's bringing us what we ordered.
Marianne, I have a question also.
Sure.
I didn't understand, I guess, when you said we can't go to the other side by ourselves. We have to take our brother with us.
Yeah.
So what does that mean? I mean, we don't spiritually evolve at the same level or time
Correct.
frame. So
Okay.
I wasn't sure what that meant.
Okay, what that basically means is literally you, it's Sophie. Sophie's here. Sophie sees this brother as doing whatever you see this brother doing that's not too much in line with what you want to see in them, okay? But understand from what the Course is trying to explain to us, literally this brother is doing what you asked him to do, because we literally projected what we didn't want to own within ourselves into something outside of ourselves so that we could play the part of an innocent victim. So literally, and the Course is very adamant about this, and most of us have a really hard time grasping with this concept. What I see in my brother is what I put in my brother because I did not want to look at it in myself. So what that means is when we choose to drop this, we have to drop the entire story in order to go to oneness. I have to drop the story of duality, and part of the duality aligns with my brother. So I have to be willing to see the story that, it's like I'm having a story and I'm going to take the story and I'm going to rip it apart because I'm not going to play in that story any longer. And I have to be willing to take my brother over here with me in order to align with truth. Now, that does not mean that my brother is going to get it the same moment that I get it. And the Course, Jesus speaks within the Course of the idea that when he got it, he took all of us with him. But because each and every one of us individually has both parts of our minds, we may not experience that he took us with us. But in his mind, he knows we are completely healed. We haven't caught up to that yet. But when you align to this completely, you then will eventually see your brother as the same as you instead of different.
Well, like it says in the Bible, I and my father are one, I and my brother are one,
Absolutely. Yes. And was that you, Cindy, that asked the question? Because I said, Sophie.
Sophia, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. But do we believe we're one? Do we believe that my brother and I are one? I mean, we can say those words. And, growing up, I was brought up Catholic, and they would always talk about the idea of forgive your brother, love your brother as yourself. Well, it finally occurred to me after doing the Course for quite some time, I do love my brother as I love myself. And I don't love either one of us because I'm aligned with the thought system of the ego. There is no love over here. This is a world of hate. It's the world of the opposite of what is truth. So yes, when we're being, asked to do that prayer, we need to bring our brother with us because our brother has the image that we have given our brother. And in order for my mind to be healed, I have to be willing to take him over here as well. Does that help?
Yes.
So that's also seeing that, yeah, what I accused him of, I'm accusing myself of, but the word comes to me, innocence, seeing the innocence in it.
Correct. And we will see our brother through the eyes of innocence because we've asked to see ourselves through the eyes of innocence. If I think I can leave my brother back here, I can't, because in oneness, there is no other. And literally, when you're dropping the dualistic thought system, you're saying, I want to find out what oneness is. And that means I can't leave my brother back there because my brother literally is me.
And the oneness thing is the sameness, right?
Exactly. And there's, a really delightful place in the Course which says, I am responsible for what I see. I choose the experiences that I experience. Well, that is not how we perceive our experience in this world. That doesn't even come in the realm of possibility. And yet that's what he's trying to explain to us. You are seeing what you want to see because you made your brother guilty so that you could get off the hook and play the part of an innocent victim, to pull off not going home, but not being responsible. And so the Course is helping us to understand we now have to flip that around and become responsible in the respect of owning what we've done to our brother, and then eventually be willing to drop it so that we can find out what the real answer is instead of what we have programmed ourselves to see.
So Marianne, I used to see my, when I got into the course, I saw myself as my purpose in life is to wake up,
Okay.
but I think my purpose in life really is to experience the love of God, because I don't experience the love of God. Is that kind of a better way to think about that?
Experiencing the love of God and waking up are really, side by side right there together. And, what you're really here for is to forgive your brother for what you think your brother did that you did. And we don't really want to go there. And the results of doing that will take you to a place where you will love your brother and you will love yourself and you will be aligned with God.
So again, it's about undoing.
Yeah.
It's already perfect love. We're already aligned with God, but we're, all these, layers of pain and guilt we have to look at. That's what I'm understanding about.
Right. And the bottom line again is how many of, ask yourself, you don't have to tell me, how many of us really are in the place where no matter what anybody says or does or how they act or what they do or don't do to me, I want to see what love is beyond that. No.
It's as simple
We're
as,
going to go in that loop thing where how dare them and what's wrong with them and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff that we normally do as good little egos on planet Earth. Am I willing to just drop that story 100%, clear screen, to be shown another way? And that's what we're really being asked to do. And that's what's going to take us to this place of totally aligning with love, where I don't have to ask what love is anymore and what my purpose is. I am my purpose, and I am the love.
So I'm thinking of these scenarios of having arguments or having people. Well, I guess in my life, I always felt that there were people who were minding my business for me, telling me what I should do about something or enlightening me about things. And so I'm just trying to like take it step by step according to how it's been presented in the past, and I've flubbed it and argued for days in my own mind, like, no, they're crazy, I'm not doing that, as opposed to this kind of silence of, it isn't because you might be quiet with your mouth, but it's going on in your mind, like, why didn't I think of something to say, and all that kind of stuff is what I guess that's what I feel like I was faced with for a long time. And so now, in hearing them take the opposite view that I'm having, I have to drop it, and I see that it's kind of a mechanism I have to practice, like not resisting what they're saying. I just have to ask, drop that thought that they're full of shit, and then, just like let that, like, almost freeze my tongue and my brain and get, the brain freeze thing around, oh my God, this is killing me. I don't want to hear this. And just go into this place of silence, because that's what the silence is. It's non-resistance to whatever's being thrown at me out there, whatever is being told to me, and then using that to get to peace, like to see that I don't want to listen to what they have to say, and I don't really want to argue with them. So it's like you get yourself in this jam where all you can do is kind of, you feel like you have to play dead in a way, but it's just the place where the non-resistance happens, where you say, oh, I don't know what, I don't know what this is. Yep. And then I can move forward through the stuff. But just that idea of someone always telling is, this kind of thing that I've invited because of the fact that I'm steeped in ego. But even so, it's like, it feels like a minefield with conversations with people who want to, crucify somebody. And yet I'm, you know, I feel like doing that to them then. Like that's, and I, you know, part of me feels like it's their fault. They brought it up, but it's just the way it's what we're made of. So I see that then. And the only way out is to get quiet and ask the Holy Spirit to intervene, to help me.
Yes. And I think your words near the beginning of this conversation where you said, I might not be saying things outside in attack form, but I'm thinking about them in my mind. And this is, we really need to even go deeper, not just in what we say or what we do. What's going in my mind? If I have any aspect of attack thoughts towards anything or anyone, I'm coming from my ego thought system, even if I don't express them in the world. And they're like popcorn popping up all the time. And again, these are wonderful opportunities to ask for healing when you become aware of them.
Mary Ann,
Yes, there was somebody that was going to say something. Was that you, Rose?
I think so.
Okay.
What I have found helpful, and Ken talks about this a lot, is feeling the pain of your judgment, allowing yourself to feel the pain of your judgment. That's what brings me to dropping it. And realizing that the pain that I'm experiencing and I'm attributing to the situation, the person, the whatever it is that's going on, is the pain of my judgment. It's not the pain of the situation, person, etc. So I would say to Shelley, what you're experiencing, and I've been there, I understand that. It's the pain of being a victim. And that's, I'm not aware of that choice, but the Course is telling me that's a choice that the mind has made. That's when I get to that point of seeing and experiencing that pain and realizing it's Ken says, withdraw the projection, which means I no longer attribute it to you or that whatever it is that's going on out here. It's a decision that's made in my mind. Then I can sit and ask for help and drop it.
Yes.
Otherwise, I'm just, if I can be aware, I don't want to drop it.
Yeah. And I think, we mentioned the concept of I'm not ready to drop it a number of times. Now see, the value of becoming aware I'm not ready to drop it yet is I literally thought if it wasn't for them, I could be okay. We're starting to come to the realization it's because I'm holding on to the thought system of separation because I'm too afraid of walking over to love. And that's not, there's no firing squad that's going to come and get me, but that's a very telling and helpful piece of information because I no longer have to blame my brother for what's going on. It's an awareness that that's because I'm not quite ready yet.
Mary Ann.
Stop. Yes.
I just want to sort of reiterate and maybe emphasize how simple this whole process is. And Dawn, you mentioned it early on. It is as simple as dropping the storyline. Then the Course tells me I say no to the no. Okay, the ego is saying no. Ouch gets my attention. Something's made me uncomfortable. I don't like this, that, or the other thing. And it doesn't matter if it's a person, place, thing, belief, whatever it is. And I just say, no, thank you. I don't need this. I'm not responsible for what happens next.
Yep. And it does become easy as we clear away all the cobwebs of our present understanding of things, and we really get to the point where we own and we believe what the Course is literally saying is absolutely true. Then it becomes very easy because it's okay, I'm over here. I don't think this is where I want to be anymore. I want this more than that. And as we do this more and more, the reflection of love starts to increase in our world. And this becomes less tolerant. So it becomes a process that becomes more comfortable. So I want to real quickly read two more things and then we will move on. And this is in Workbook 85, Review 69. my grievances show me what is not there. Okay? So I'm seeing a world that's not there, and it's being held together by the grievances that I hold within. And it hides from me what I would see. So when I really want to see this more than I want this, I'm willing to drop the grievances. I see, I must lay grievances aside and want to see this. Wait a minute, I want to see, and this will be the means by which I will succeed. I have to drop the grievances. I cannot hold on to grievances and have the experiences of what I really want to see. End of story. And so the world is always going to remind me of what grievances I hold on to, because anything that triggers me is an opportunity for me to lay them aside. And I think it's also extremely important for us to understand in this process that the necessary condition for a holy instant does not require that you have no thoughts that are not pure, but that it requires that you have none that you would keep. Okay, so these thoughts are going to continue to pop up, and we're not asked to feel depressed or upset or irritated every time you become aware of them. Just simply realize they're popping up because there's still more healing to be done. What do I want to do with it now? And one day the answer will be, I want to drop the story so I can find out what his story is instead of what my story is. Okay, so don't be surprised if as you're progressing in this process and working very diligently on this, that more and more stuff is going to pop up, because we're literally asking to heal. And what we're asking to heal means is everything that is not healed is going to come to the surface to have you question, am I willing to drop it, or am I going to continue to hold on dearly for it? Okay, so at the end of last week's class, and it may have even been after we turned off the tape, I'm not positive, Bob made a comment, which was a telling comment, and he basically said, if God didn't give us free will, then I wouldn't be in this trouble, so therefore it's God's fault. Which I think is pretty normal in the ego thinking, because the ego is always going to find somebody that's the fault instead of me, because don't you understand, I am an innocent victim. So I knew there was a section in the course that addressed this, so I went exploring, and fortunately I did find it. So Bob, this is for you, but it's really for everybody as well. And this section is on page 17 in the text. We didn't have to go very far, so all of you have probably read this already once or twice, whether you remember it or not. And the section is called The Origins of Separation. So this is going to tell us how this all unfolded. All right. To extend is a fundamental aspect of God which he gave to his Son. In the creation, God extended himself to his creations and imbued them with the same loving will to create. You have not only been fully created, but have also been created perfect. There is no emptiness in you. Because of your likeness to your Creator, you are creative. No child of God can lose this ability because it is inherent in what he is, but he can use it inappropriately by projecting. The inappropriate use of extension or projection occurs when you believe that some emptiness or lack exists in you, and that you can fill it with your own ideas instead of truth. And I'm going to stop there because it's going to go into the different steps. So to extend is a fundamental aspect of God, which he gave to his Son. So when God gave us all our gifts, when he was sitting on the throne, better put the throne over here, he gave us all the attributes that he owns. And one of them is to extend. And the extension of the Son of God is to extend love. God extended his love into his Son, which became the major extension of his creations, excuse me. So in the creation, God extended himself, capital H, to his creations and imbued them with the same loving will to create. So you could think about it as a sun that extends the rays that expand beyond what the sun is. And we are part of the rays, and we extend, when we're aligned with truth, more love. And that's the only thing that we can do. It's our nature. It's our gift from God. You have not only been fully created, but have also been created perfect. So again, we have to remind ourselves our true essence is that we are perfect, okay? There is no emptiness in you. There is no lack. There is none of that. You are created perfect, and that's your essence, and that is who you are. Because of your likeness to your Creator, you are creative. No child of God can lose his ability because it is inherent in what he is. All right, I'm going to stop there for Bob. So this is our inherent ability that God gave us. It is not because he did it to screw us to see if we're going to mess up. It's because he gave us what is his to give, and it is part of us. But the Son, he can use it inappropriately by projecting. So when we choose the opposite, we then begin to project instead of extend when we are aligned with truth. The inappropriate use of extension or projection occurs when you believe that some emptiness or lack exists in you. And let me just stop there. And when we chose for the separation, we literally chose the opposite of love. So all the attributes that we were given as love are in opposition to the attributes that we've now accepted as our reality. And love does not live over here. The opposite of love or hate lives over here. So everything from that decision for that choice and taking it seriously has been the projection of that thought system, which again is the opposite of the thought system that we were freely given in love from God. And that you can fill it, or I'm going to read that sentence again, sentence 7. The inappropriate use of extension or projection occurs when you believe that some emptiness or lack exists in you, and that you can fill it with your own ideas instead of truth, which is exactly what we did. We took the idea of love and we covered it over with our ideas. And our ideas, again, are the opposite of the ideas of what truth are. And now we live in this world and think that this is who we are and what we are. And I just wanted, because some of you are fairly new and I don't know if I've used this chart for a while, but you might look at our world, and we all know there are some aspects of our world that seem a little bit more comfortable. So we'll call those the light gray clouds. And then the dark gray clouds are the ones that we would say are just awful and terrible. I can go to the movie, that's kind of nice, but you know, what happened in Washington was horrible. But literally, whether it's a quote unquote positive aspect of the world or a negative part of the world, it's still part of the illusion that is covering what we are, which is the oneness and connection. And Jesus is already there. He knows we are already there, but we haven't accepted that we are there yet because some aspect of the illusion is still holding our attention. All right, so we're going to move on to this next part where it says this process involves the following steps. So you could say that these are the steps that led us into the belief system of the ego. First, you believe that what God created can be changed by your own mind. Okay, so literally having chosen for the ego within our mind has taken us to a place where we have changed what God made real. It didn't really happen, but in our experience, in our belief in the ego or the illusion, that's the experience that we have. Second, you believe that what is perfect can be rendered imperfect or lacking. Certainly, we all know within the context of the illusion, within the dream, the character of the hero, there is certainly a whole lot of imperfect or lacking going on. Literally, our very existence on planet Earth requires that I take something in, whether it's a breath or it's food. In order to exist, I need to take something in, which means I lack. I am imperfect. There's something missing. Because when we were aligned with truth, that was all taken care of. I didn't have to grab something to make me whole and survive on planet Earth. And again, as we're going through these steps, I want you to kind of step back and think about the fact that we were literally in this lifetime popped into this world that already was made up of all of this. So for any of us to even consider even the possibility of questioning this was never even in our existence. You know, what do you mean I have to take in food? That means I lack. That makes no sense in the concept of what I accept as my reality and who I think I am in the world. Never even occurred, not even available. And yet that's part of the trick of keeping us very stuck in here, because we would never even question, what does that mean? But what the Course is trying to help us understand is, if we lift this veil and we dig deeper into what set this world up, that was the way it was done to keep us very stuck in this square where we would never question what's going on, and we would always be driven by what exists here. Never questioning that, wait a minute, there was someone who wrote the story that I am now living in. And now I have a better understanding of what this is all about, so that I can begin to work on the process of undoing it. So again, the third one is you believe that you can distort, oh wait a minute, that was the third one, that was the second one. All right, so the third one is you believe that you can distort the creations of God, including yourself. Well, if in truth I am love, and I am an extension of all the attributes that is given here, love, peace, and joy, eternity, innocence, and we're all the same. And I'm living in the world that I believe in, which is about guilt, sin, and fear, separation, and all that kind of stuff. We know this must be where I'm sitting, because I'm not experiencing a whole lot of this. Yeah, maybe a flicker once in a while, but the majority of my time on planet Earth, if I'm really looking deeply enough, I will become aware most of it's run by this, okay? And this is what we bought when we chose for separation. You know, hopefully we didn't realize me wanting to be in charge and sitting on the throne would mean I had to kick God off all the attributes he's given me. And now I live in a world of opposites, and this is not working out very well, okay? We didn't get that. But this is the results of that choice. And again, he says, you believe you can distort creations of God, including yourself. We live in a world where I am this distorted character compared to what and who I really am. It's a character that's always feeling guilty about something, or an innocent victim of something. I could not feel or experience that if I was aligned with truth. And the fourth, you believe that you can create yourself, and that the direction of your own creation is up to you. So now we live in this silly world where I think, not only do I think I have to be in charge, I've been taught since the first breath, basically, that I have to take care of myself, and I've got to do things in the world to be okay, and on and on and on the storyline goes. But that is all a result of choosing to be on the throne and kicking God off the throne. So now this is the effect of that choice, of which the Course is constantly trying to nudge us and remind us, but wait a minute, guys, there's another way to do this. But you have to drop your story completely in order to embrace this new way of thinking. But it can be done. Before, I didn't know I had another choice. I didn't know this was an option available. But now we do. So I'm going to read over those 4 steps again. First, you believe that what God created can be changed by your own mind. And I remember Ken used to say, that's why devil worshipers thought that they were more powerful from God, because they were able to pull this off. But the deal is, yes, we have the experience of believing we've pulled this off, but literally nothing here can ever affect who and what we really are. And nothing we experience here will ever bring us a place of peace. And in a sense, peace is our true nature. Eventually, we will be drawn to the desire and the need to go back to what that peace is. So at times we may appear as though we pulled something off by choosing against God, but we really lost a lot in order to have that transition occur. We've literally taken on an identity in the opposition of our brother, or of ourselves, and we've made our brother guilty so we could play the part of being an innocent victim. Second, you believe that what is perfect can be rendered imperfect or lacking. And again, how many of us are thinking that in our heads every day? No way. We're oblivious to what's the underplaying of what's going on and why it has brought us to where we are. And again, the course is here to help us understand why we chose the separation, what the separation is bringing us, so that we can eventually come to a logical conclusion that this is no longer working for me, if indeed we really want peace more than anything else. Third, you believe you can distort the creations of God, including yourself. Well, we've miffed ourselves so much that we even believe that we pulled that off. And again, as I said a few minutes ago, we were never at a wherewithal to even question it. But now we're getting, the underlying deal that's taking place that has brought us to this, so that we hopefully will choose differently when the time comes. And fourth, you believe that you can create yourself and that the direction of your own creation is up to you. Which basically means, as Jesus keeps reminding us, I have to be willing to drop my seeming own creations if I want to find out what God really is. And guess what? One of my biggest creations is that my brother's the guilty party and I'm the innocent victim. One big lying story that we have written, fallen into, and lived through for eons of time. But it doesn't make it true. Any comments before we go on to the next section there? I guess you're all stunned, right? Which is understandable under the circumstances. Okay. All right. So these related distortions represent a picture of what actually occurred in the separation or the detour into fear. None of this existed before the separation, nor does it actually exist now. Everything God created is like Him. Extension as undertaken by God is similar to the inner radiance that the children of the Father inherit from Him. Its real source is internal. This is as true of the Son as of the Father. In this sense, creation includes both the creation of the Son by the Father and the Son's creations when His mind is healed. This requires God's endowment of the Son with free will, because all loving creation is freely given in the one continuous line in which all aspects are of the same order. All right, so these related distortions represent a picture of what actually occurred in the separation or the detour into fear. So when we chose for this, we chose the detour into fear. You cannot not have fear when we align with the ego. It's part of the pudding that makes up this choice. You can't not have fear over here because the pudding of this choice does not have fear as one of its ingredients. And you could use the word fear, guilt, sin, separation, irritation, upset, all the attributes that the ego entails came as a result of the choice of the detour into fear. It goes on to say, none of this existed before the separation, nor does it actually exist now. Understand, when we begin to choose for this, we are literally choosing for a world that is in total opposition to the one we've been aligned with for eons of time. So even though from our perspective, letting go of our investment in this world is a rough deal sometimes, it is literally taking us to an experience that is so far beyond anything within the context of the world that when we finally make these choices more and more consistently, we will be so glad that we finally dawned on us that there is another way. But that means I've got to be willing to drop it. And again, none of this existed before the separation, nor does it actually exist now. But in order to get that it doesn't exist now, that means I have to understand that literally none of the illusion exists and none of it's real. But because we're so invested in the illusion, that's not likely to happen today or tomorrow. We are not ready to drop that investment. So we do it in very slow, methodical, steps along the way till the point when we really get that that's our reality. Everything God created is like himself. Like him, it says. So God created us, we are like him. When we chose to play the game of choosing for the opposite, we chose to not see ourselves as God created us. We are still like God created us, but we've covered it over by that big shadow of the ego. Extension as understood by God is similar to the inner radiance that the children of the Father inherit from him. So the extension would be when I align with love, it's almost as though we become like a lighthouse. A lighthouse doesn't think about who's going to be affected by its light. It doesn't walk down the street to give some people more light. It's a lighthouse. It just extends what it is, which is light. Okay? So there isn't this, how do I do this? What's it going to look like? Any of that kind of stuff out the window. I will simply extend love because that's what I identify with. Just like when we identify with the ego, we can't help but project guilt, sin, and fear, separation, division, and on and on. Different choices, different results. Its real source is internal. Has nothing to do with the outside. When I'm aligned with this, I'm going to get duality. When I align with this, I'm going to get oneness. But it's internal. I see it as external because all I am focused on most of the time is my belief in the world of time and space. And again, Jesus is trying to lift the veil to show you there's a whole lot more going on here, kids. This is not the end all of everything. Though that's the experience we've had, because as I said, the moment you popped into the world, this is all we were aware of. Of course, is opening up the rising above the battleground so we can extend and see much more of the intake of what's really going on. This is as true of the Son as of the Father, because the Son has all the attributes the Father has. The only attribute that God has that the Son does not have is that the Son cannot be the creator. And that's where the problem came in. The Son decided it wanted to be the creator. So we made this entire illusion, this entire experience, and we don't want to let it go now. Even if there's times when we know it's not particularly the best thing we've got going. Are we willing to let it go, or are we not willing to let it go? But as we become more and more inept in the understanding of what choosing the ego brings us, we will become more and more willing to drop it more and more quickly. But again, it's an internal job. I'm not going to get the results of peace from my brother because my brother doesn't have it to give it to me. Because my brother was made from my belief system of lack, limitation, separation, and the opposite of love. So if I'm waiting for my brother to start being something other than what my brother appears to be, while I'm identified with this and I continue to stay here, it's not going to happen. It's only when I drop my investment in the story of my brother and I'm willing to find out what the connection of oneness looks like and is experienced as, that I will then reap the effects of love within myself, and I will automatically extend that love to anything and everyone I come in contact with. It's automatic, just like this is automatic. In this sense, the creation includes both the creation of the Son by God and the Son's creation when his mind is healed. So basically what this means is God just always extends love, and as the Son remembers who he is and connects with his right mind, we will automatically extend that love just like the Father does, because love begets love, just like the ego begets ego, begets ego. This requires God's endowment of the Son with free will, because all loving creation is freely given one continuous line in which all aspects are of the same order. So God gave us free will because he has free will, and then we extend that free will. When we chose to separate, we lost that. Well, we still have a free will, but when we chose to separate, our will was then given over to the belief in separation, and then everything from that moment on extends and is projected from that choice of that free will of choosing to separate.
Okay, oh, Mary Ann,
Yes, Bob?
that he gave us free will out of his love.
Well, he gave us free will because that's what he is.
Right.
And the love is, you know, an aspect or a definition of that. So
Right.
he could not do it.
And if he wouldn't have given us free will, then we would be a slave.
Right. We would not be the Son of God then.
Right. We would be a slave.
Yes.
And so by giving us a free will, he freed us up, and then we misused his free will.
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. So it's really a good thing that we have free will.
Yes.
But we made the choice to, you know, how the miscreator, however that was worded, to do it on our own because we wanted to be the creator. We wanted to be special. We wanted to be different. And as a result of that, we got the opposite.
But now, from what I understand, that not every left God and became the ego. Some stayed. And so I would say, because we have free will, and when we go back to God, our love for God will be much stronger than the people who didn't leave God and then come back.
Well, I'm not sure about that in the regard that love is just love. I don't think there are degrees of you know, love. I think when we're really talking about the absolute love, it is expressed through and from everyone. It just is what it is. It doesn't have a I'm better than you. That's part of duality again.
Yeah, but I would think that would be something special.
I know. You want to be an innocent victim again, Bob. But I understand why you're asking that question, and it does seem
Right.
that way. But also
Right,
think about
that they're the same as if a child leaves home and experiences the world and
Right.
then comes back. He's going to appreciate the world. He's going to appreciate his home much better than he did before. So when we go back to God, we're going to appreciate God much more than the people who never left, because they never experienced what we have experienced.
That's a story of the prodigal son.
Right, yes,
I was
right.
just going to say that, but understand from the perspective of the prodigal son story, the one son went out and did all this stuff and then came to the realization and came back to love.
Right.
But the son that stayed home wasn't really choosing for love either, because he was judging his brother. So again, we can be on either side, be the nice guy and still be part of the ego, as compared to the seemingly bad guy, but we're still not coming from a place of pure love. So when you're really coming from a place of pure love, you can't help but extend just pure love. It's your very nature.
And there's only one of us.
And there's only
So
one
how
of
are we talking about multiple beings in God? We don't have that.
That's correct. When you're aligned with this, yes. Over here,
Yes.
we got, who knows what we're going to be playing.
Right.
Yeah.
The story is used as a symbol to help those of us who think we're here and think we're in competition with God, to help us realize that's not true. God loves us.
And God loves the idiot on the highway that just, almost ran you over. And see, that's where we have the problem.
Yeah.
We want to embrace that God loves us, but we want to leave them in the dust. And that's why this whole idea of, I can't leave my brother in the dust if I'm going to walk over here, because both of us are one. And if I leave him here, I'm leaving me here.
Or the people that attack the Capitol. God loves them just as much as that's. I know it's a lot more loaded, but
Yes, and that again, when we started the class off with that prayer, I give you to the Holy Spirit as part of myself. How many of us are willing to see the perpetrator in that light? Most of us have quite a bit to go before we're completely, absolutely willing to just drop any story, no matter how big or ugly or terrible or how many people have been killed. Am I willing to drop that so that I can learn what that unconditional, absolute love, where my brother and I are the same, and we're both 100% unconditional love.
But I think that after I experienced hell, that I would be much more happier with the love.
I understand where you're coming from, Bob. And there are some philosophies that say that's why we separated, because now we'll appreciate love when we get back. I don't know. I'm not going to go there, but I understand where you're coming from, and that does seem logical. But again, we didn't really leave. So you see, that's another aspect.
But we think we did.
Well, we think we did, yes.
As far as I know, that I've left.
Yep. If you're living anything but absolute unconditional love, then you believe you left. Yes.
Right.
And I think we come to a point where you don't really care what happens over here, because you've had enough of this and you're willing to just accept whatever comes, because you don't want to. Who cares anymore? I've had enough of this.
It can't be any worse than what I had.
Any worse? Yes, correct. And that's a really good place to be, because when you're coming from that place, you are much more willing to just drop it all, because you can't tolerate it anymore.
And accept things the way they are with love.
Absolutely.
And competition is the last thing you want, because that brings up the ego again. So the competition is what kills you. I mean, you if you're going to have love, then you don't want to think somebody else can have a comeuppance on you, right? And you don't, because if you have love, then you have everything.
Well, yes, and you cannot have competition in oneness. It does not exist. You know, we're coming from a world of competition. And of course, we're going to view everything, including listening to what the Course is talking about, through the lens of competition and duality. It can't not be any other way. But we, again,
And also that when you have the peace, nothing else matters. You don't have that. You don't even have that urge for competition because it's just so much. It's just absolutely the truth and the answer to your predicament that you think you're separated, but you're not. So you don't need to think about, I mean, the whole wonderful part about peace is you stop thinking about what everybody else is doing and you could care less. I mean, it's just, happens and all of a sudden there you are in peace. And then it doesn't matter who's on first.
exactly. And be very aware. I was listening to a spiritual class earlier today, and the class was taken or was done. It was a tape that was done just before or right after the stuff in Washington, and the teacher, addressed that, but then he immediately went into the concept of the spiritual practice, because we could sit and talk about all the stuff that happens in the world, but if I'm talking about all the stuff that's happening in the world, I'm not doing this, because I'm still putting all my time and energy and effort into where the problem is. Well, the problem isn't in the world. The problem is really in my mind. And when I relinquish what's in my mind to align with this, then I have the experience of what that piece is. I'm not back there talking about it.
I had a interesting thought that the world, to survive in the world, you have to be at the top of your competition. And love in the world doesn't seem to work in the world because people will take advantage of you. So in the world, it's, to get by in this world, in this ego world, you need to be competitive.
Right, until you really get in line with this, where the
Right.
competition ends, and it'll all get taken care of. But we're not trusting enough most of the time to wait for that train to show up, I guess you could say. Yeah, and again, so much of our programmed makeup is I've got to be in control. It's so huge. We're not even aware of how huge that is. And again, going, oh, that's right, I don't have to be in control, isn't natural for us. That's going to take some practice.
Well, this is why I plan ahead to be in control.
Of course we do. Or we compulse about what happened in the past. That's the makeup of the mind as well.
If I didn't want to be in control, I would sit back and accept things as they would happen.
Absolutely. And look at how most of us just shudder inside thinking about that as a possibility, because we're not acclimated to live and be that way yet.
Right.
All righty. So again, this requires God's endowment of the Son of God with free will, because all living creation is freely given in one continuous line in which all aspects are of the same order. So again, God's endowment of the Son is free will. Somebody's got their speaker on. I'm not sure who it is that's making noise. Everybody turn their speakers off just in case. Get it? Sounds better. So God's extension is always extension of love. He can't not extend from love. And when we chose to separate from that love, we began to project from the opposite of that. And in order for us to get to the point where we can just be part of the extension of God's love, I have to stop this and join with this. And then that's gonna just automatically flow from me.
Because the ego is hate.
Because the ego is hate.
The opposite of love.
Yes. And there's, a line in the Course, well, there's actually quite a number of places that talk about the ego being hate, which is the opposite of love, which for most of us, when we first start hearing or understanding the Course, again, shudder by hearing the word. I don't think I'm hate. I might be kind of nasty sometimes, but most of the time I'm pretty loving and nice. But this is saying when you're aligned with the ego, you're literally coming from hate. And that takes a bit of time to digest because we don't see ourselves as that, especially since we paid a very high price of playing the part of an innocent victim and making somebody else be the problem instead of ourselves.
Well, like what we discussed a couple Course in Miracles back about my sister-in-law,
Oh, right.
who was
Yes.
in the hospital and was under drugs and all this, and she swears and cusses and pulls her AVs out. That there is a true ego, but is what we have done is taken that and made it a little nicer, and we smile and this type of stuff and say what a good person I am. But the bottom line is we are that ego that's so nasty and hateful.
You know, he doesn't call it kill or be killed for nothing.
Right.
And there's actually at least one or two places in the Course, or one for sure, where it says, if we were honest with ourselves, wouldn't we notice that how much easier it is to hate than it is to love? And of course it would be, as long as we're aligned with the ego, because that's the makeup of the ego. And as Bob was saying in regard to his sister-in-law, you know, we have this facade of I'm a pretty nice person most of the time. But we all know it doesn't take much to trigger, and you know, like we're like a volcano that can just start spewing all over the living room. Right. And that is representative of the fact that that's what's underlying within this thought system. And we're being asked not to look at that in from the perspective of feeling bad or hating yourself, but looking at it more from a perspective of, oh, that's what I got when I chose for separation. And do I really want that now? It's not about making us feel worse than we already felt.
Right. And if that's how we act, how could I love myself when that's who I am?
Well, and it's not, that's the, you know,
who I think I am.
Right, that's the physical representation of that. But the bottom line is when we chose for separation, we took on the total opposite identity. So we hate ourselves, and that's why we project into the world thinking we got rid of the hate and made it somebody else's problem so we could play the part of an innocent victim. So now as we're becoming aware of those moments where I'm spewing all over, that's just telling of what this is all about. And again, not to make us feel worse than we already feel, but to become aware of that's really the package we bought when we chose for the ego. And do we want to continue to choose to order more of that? And again, every moment is an opportunity to make a choice either for or against what we've chosen.
And to realize underneath the hate is fear.
Absolutely, yes. And if you remember the words in this section, it said, where did I put that? That these related distortions represent a picture of what actually occurred in the separation or the detour into fear. That was the detour into fear, and then everything else kind of extended beyond that of the guilt, sin, and fear and whatnot. I'm afraid now, and if we think about the spaceship concept, if you were in a spaceship and you went exploring in your outfit that has your ability for you to breathe, and if somebody cut the umbilical cord, suddenly you would be going like a balloon into total absolute terror, black, dark, the opposite of what light and love was. Well, that's basically what occurred when we made that choice and we realized what we did was not a very comfortable experience whatsoever. So we cover it up with all these stories that keeps us, being able to survive one more day on planet Earth. But as we begin to uncover some of those layers, as Shelley was commenting, this was a hard week for her because some of those layers are coming to the surface and they're not easy to look at. But we're being asked again to sit in the audience and observe or look at what's going on, holding the hand of Jesus. And that will, make it a little bit more comfortable process.
Right. Well, if I am this,
It-
if I am, in the ego, and everybody there's only one ego, and everybody's ego is like mine, and I'm capable of killing and torturing people, and then the person next to me is capable of the same thing. Why wouldn't I be in fear?
Absolutely, Bob.
Why wouldn't I be?
Absolutely. And, a lot of people may not have explored deep enough to realize that the truth is, given the right circumstances, we are all capable of killing. It really is a part, well, and again, kill or be killed. That whether I'm doing it physically or if I'm doing it with my mind, I am literally either feeding into a world of kill or be killed, or I'm feeding into a world of love and sameness. There are, again, no other choices. And whether we have the guns or knives in our hand or our pocket, or it's just going on in my mind, I'm feeding one of these two thought systems all the time. And we need to observe what's going on in there. And if it's something coming out of my mind that is not of absolute, pure, unconditional love, again, this is what's running the show. And that's the popcorn that's now being popped into my brain, that I can say I'm an innocent victim of the popcorn, of the thoughts that are popping in my head. But in truth, they're coming because of the choice of the Son of God to separate instead of stay connected to love. And again, those are the moments I can use even those seemingly random thoughts that pop up to ask to see it differently as well.
And there's also times when as my ego gives money away, helps other people to say, see, I'm a pretty good person. See me? Look what I did. I can't be so bad.
Yep. And that doesn't mean you never do that, but be very observant of, is there any, look how good I am because I did that goes
Right.
with that.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you stop doing it, but be aware that there is usually, within the context of the ego form of giving, some hook.
Right.
Yeah. And when we come over here, there are no hooks.
Right.
Okay? This is a whole different plan from this one. Even though within the context of the world, you may appear to be a really nice person compared to other people when you're doing nice things.
Right.
That doesn't mean you're coming from a place of love.
Right.
It can be
Right.
very much you're coming from a place of the ego, which
This
is real tricky again, because it seems like it's nice, but we're really motivated by some form of
my
getting
guilt.
right.
I'm trying to cover up my guilt.
But again, a very tricky little
Right.
aspect there.
Sick.
Yeah, it's very sick, Bob, very sick, yeah. And, I'm reminded of a quote of Mother Teresa's where she basically says, if I'm holding hate towards a person, there's no room for love.
Right.
And, it's pretty simple when you boil it down to that. If I'm holding my brother in a place of hate, I can't possibly see him through the eyes of love. I have made my choice. I made my decision. We're done. And until I'm
Okay,
yeah. Somebody
I want to say one thing to finish off because it's time to, regarding, I think you started off talking about the news of the world and all the cataclysm that's going on in Washington and all that crap. But it is crap. It's something that's happened all the time. And all of us that are of a certain age, which we all are, we've witnessed this stuff. Probably before this was 9/11, but I mean, I remember marching in 68 and anti-war marches and all that stuff, and thinking it was like this was the epitome of everything that could happen. And there's always another incident like that'll come. The wheel goes around, and what you can do is observe it as a play. Observe it like they're all characters in the play.
And they're all coming from our mind.
And I have a favorite quote that's from Lao Tzu. over 2,000 years old. And he says, the master sees things as they are without trying to control them. She sits, lets them go their own way, and resides in the center of the circle. Stay centered and just observe. Observe all this stuff that's going on. Don't take it so seriously.
Exactly.
I agree with you. I
Okay.
appreciate what you're saying, Beata, but I've never seen anything like this in my, again, I was too young in the 60s, but 9/11 to me was one day and it came from, outside our country. I've never seen anything like this, in my lifetime. So again, I agree with everything you're saying. That's a good perspective.
It always seems that way, Marty. It always seems
Yeah.
like this is an exceptional, horrendous cataclysm. But I don't know.
Well, if you even think about the concept in the Bible where Adam and Eve had the Cain and Abel, and one of the sons killed the other son. Parents have been praying for peace since then. This world is not a world of peace, and that's and I know that doesn't mean we can't do the best we can to work towards that in our worlds. But this is a world that was not made of peace. And the ultimate
hate.
Right. It's made of hate and the opposite of peace. So the ultimate healing, no matter what we may do, you may write your congressman letters, you may, as Beata said, go protest or whatever. Do what you need to do in the world. But keep reminding yourself to connect with what the peace of your mind is. And again, that's what's going to heal you. All the rest, go through whatever you need to do that you feel is important or valuable or necessary. But understand, and I think about it as, if this is light and we've been walking away from light, well, the darkness is going to start looking pretty darn dark when we can't have access to the light anymore, which might be the catalyst that will eventually turn us around so we'll walk back to the light. So, don't get me wrong, I'm not happy about what's going on in the world, but we don't really know what that's going on can start turning people in a direction that nothing else could possibly have turned them to. So
yes, how you be in the world, but not of the world.
Absolutely.
Be in the world,
No,
like Jesus said.
No, but also the Course of Miracles says, whatever you see in the world that upsets you, that is yours, and you should take it to the Holy Spirit.
Correct.
And then there's that.
Got it.
And thank you, Beata,
Amen,
because
God.
this kind of thing has been going on forever.
And yes,
I have to bring up the black
And
lie.
it probably
okay?
will be.
Okay, as
Yeah.
as a black person, the total experience, the different experience, and I like to think Jim McDonald in those classes would say, when something happens he brought up something. I may mess it up. Help me, somebody. But people are dying and violence and all this stuff, riotous behavior is going on all the time. But until it happens to me,
right?
Okay, until it happens to you, then we don't even pay attention to it.
Right.
Right.
Yep. And we all have.
But still, it's happening on the television, okay? It's not happening in my house.
Right.
So, I mean, just all those different ways to look at it.
And again,
Are we being
right. Look at the hooks that get you. That's your classroom.
Right.
Yes. Right.
I mean, we're only asked to be aware of what's going on.
Absolutely.
I took a walk the other day. I had the realization that I was feeling a lot of fear and nothing was going on around me.
Yeah.
So I immediately asked for help. It brought me to tears because I'm afraid all the time.
Exactly.
It's a free floating kind of fear, like anxiety. It's not even attached to anything.
To anything. I wasn't in that moment. I wasn't thinking about anything specific.
Yeah.
And after walking for a few minutes, the thought came up: are you upset now?
Yeah.
You know, something that, speaking of Jim McDonald, is it happening now?
Right.
And I stopped.
Yep.
The only thing that was happening in that moment was the snow was flying in my face, and I was enjoying it. Few minutes after that, I'm walking back home, and I'm walking down a road, and I hear a horn beep, and before the beep even stopped, I had a feeling of fear, and then the immediate story of they're beeping at me. And then I looked across the street and I see a guy leaning into his car, and he hit the horn by accident. Once again,
Yes, but we will take
I think it has to do with me. I always think everything has to do with me.
hero of the dream. The only way it can be, as long as we're aligned.
So, hey, Rose, as Bob Newhart says, are you there? Oh,
Yeah, I know. Stop
oh
it.
my. Are you?
Yeah.
Yeah, stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it.
And I realized that it happened so quickly, and there's no way for me to stop it. The only thing that I can do.
No, I'm just being silly.
No, I know.
I'm
I
just being
hear
silly.
you. But it was helpful. It was helpful to see how. I mean, we're talking nanoseconds.
Absolutely. And that's how it comes in. You know, people say, oh, I'm getting better at the course. Tell me how you're doing now. That's what I want to hear about. And if it's not total love that comes pouring out of me, I got work to do, baby. And
Yeah, it was just noticing that, and oh my God, here I am again. This guy's just, he hit his horn by accident. I think it has to do with me. Help me.
Yeah. Yes.
And they just think how lucky we are to have the Course of
Oh
Miracles.
my gosh.
Most people don't have this.
Yeah.
I
So-
so agree.
Count your blessings.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes.
We are blessed.
And
Yes.
so
Right.
even with the
We
thing
are
in Washington, I know it seems extreme, but I'm sitting here and I'm looking at on the television at this. You know, where am I now? You know, as far as it's just a TV show. You know, it's just a
Right.
TV show.
Yep.
From where I
That's
sit
what
on
it is. Yes.
Yep. Exactly.
Yes.
All right,
That-
guys. Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
That TV show is our whole life.
Well, and be very aware if you go to a movie, if somebody gets killed or if somebody's giggling and laughing, your emotions go up and down, and you know 100% this is not happening. It's going to take us a while to get the practice in where we can respond as though nothing happened in our real world, because we made it very solid to pull this off.
Those of you who are old enough to remember Dorothy Fulltime when the National Guard shot the students at Kent State.
I was there.
Yep.
She said on the air, people die every day.
Exactly.
Is it
Whoever said I was there, so was I that day at Kent
I'm
State.
sorry.
Yeah.
I couldn't hear. Who was that? Helene?
Me. I
That
said I
was
was,
Tricia.
I don't know who
Sophie.
the other one was. I
The
said
other
I was at Kent State
Oh, you were at Kent. Yeah, I had friends.
on May 4th. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't hear the story. Who was that? Helene?
Yes.
Yes, that was Helene.
Oh, I couldn't hear you for some reason.
Yeah, you're a little soft today for some reason, Helene.
For some reason, it's not picking up.
You're disappearing on us?
That was better.
Basically what she was saying was at the time of the shootings at Kent, that Dorothy Fullheim got on the news and said, people die every day. Is a representation of, yes, this is horrible, but this happens every day. Okay, let me mute everybody. Let's say the prayer, and anybody wants to stay on after that, you're certainly
Yeah,
welcome to
yeah.
stay on. Okay, so everyone please close your eyes. Take a nice big deep breath and let it all go. Forgive us our illusions, Father, and help us to accept our true relationship with you, in which there are no illusions and where none can ever enter. Our holiness is yours. What can there be in us that needs forgiveness when yours is perfect? The sleep of forgetfulness is only the unwillingness to remember your forgiveness and your love. Let us not wander into temptation, for the temptation of the Son of God is not your will. And let us receive only what you have given, and accept with this into the minds which you created and which you love. Amen.
Thank you, everybody. And
Thank you.
I would go on to say,
Thank you all.
as well as the course,
Oops, sorry. Somehow you got muted there. Go on.
okay. No, I was just going to say is I appreciate the course.